And welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Benched with Bubba, episode 712, continuing our team-by-team previews for the 2025 fantasy baseball season. And we're sticking in the AL East, and we're going to Tampa Bay. The Tampa Bay Rays, a fun team for fantasy, either fun tongue-in-cheek or not, depending on platoons or what you like down there, but always fantasy relevance coming out of Tampa. In order to help me break them down once again, you can find them on the Sleeper and the Bust podcast. The one and only man behind Collette Calls over at RotoWire. He's on Blue Sky at jasoncollette.bsky.social. The one, the only Jason Collette. How we doing, my friend?
What's up, man? How are you?
Good to see you again. You know, we get to hang out a little bit every November, but and we get to chat Rays. It's always fun chatting with you. So good to see you.
Indeed, I like talking about them. I don't know if I'm going to enjoy watching them as much this year, but let's. Last year finishing 80 and 82, I was really hoping they could win that final game and avoid getting below 500, but it didn't happen. They lost that last game of the season and finished 80 and 82. But that's their lowest finish in a while, so thus is life. Not bad considering the franchise shortstop decided to do what he did.
Yeah, I could talk about that forever, but we probably shouldn't, just because it's every time a new report comes out, I'm just like, what in the world's going on? Like, it gets worse and worse, and that's a thing of the past, and
gone.
What I feel bad for, and this is, I'll see, like, I follow a lot of like baseball card collectors, and they do like rips and stuff, and he's on the cover of so many things, and I'm just like, oh no, it's just everywhere you turn. But all right. Let's look at the positives here. You mentioned 80-82 was the worst in a while. So that says a lot for a team that doesn't usually spend a lot of money. And we joke about the platoons and all that. They still find a way to be competitive every single year, it feels like, in a very, very tough division. So that is a big-time plus. But they have an even bigger hurdle to jump potentially this year, Jason. For those that are living under a rock, a massive hurricane hit the Tampa Bay area this year. The whole roof, it reminded me of the Metrodome, the way the Baggy situation and all that, very similar, just collapsed, just gone. And the city of Tampa is not going to pay for it, so it take forever, one of the two. I haven't heard the final verdict on that. So long story short, Tampa Bay Rays are playing in a minor league ballpark owned by the New York Yankees. So that'll be fun, but that does change things a bit, Jason. So you put some awesome notes on this. What do you have on this new ballpark that we're playing at for fantasy purposes?
Yeah, I mean, to be clear, with Tropicana Field, forever when I used to live in the area and I did media work there, they would often remind us that it was built with the slant for a couple of reasons. The roof there, because one, to help control air conditioning, and then B, to help withstand a Category 3 hurricane that could withstand winds up to 115 miles an hour. Well, guess what? It took a direct hit. It finally took a direct hit, and it hadn't been fully maintained. And so that 115 was best case scenario. 105 turned it into a convertible. And it's not like you could convert the stadium into an outdoor stadium because you don't build a drainage system in a dome. So it is what it is. That's gone. The municipalities are the landlord. The team had a lease use agreement, so they're not on the hook to pay for repairs. And obviously they were hoping to the money that they were contributing towards a new ballpark situation, they wanted to put it there. Why? And I don't blame them. I mean, why would you spend money to put a roof on something that's for a 2-year solution? It didn't make any sense to me. However, they're moving to Steinbrenner. And at least I look at it as we know what it is for dimensions. It's Yankee Stadium. It's the exact same dimensions, but the curveball here, if you will, it's Yankee Stadium with weather conditions that we only see in Yankee Stadium in the summertime. So, the race schedule is very loaded with home games in the front half. I think it was something like 69 in their first 104 games or something are home games, because they're trying to avoid why we had an indoor stadium in the Tampa Bay area to begin with, the summer weather. For those who aren't familiar with the Central Florida area in the summertime, and I mean, really, summertime's like end of April. I don't even know if this current schedule is going to even be able to withstand it. But afternoon showers are a regular thing, like clockwork, and they come through and they dump hard and heavy, and then it's muggy as all get out with it, and so it impacts. I think they've had something anywhere from 6 to 13 rainouts in the Florida State League play. So there's been minor league play there. Throughout forever. A lot of these spring training sites are the minor league sites. But so when we look at park factors, this is one of the things that kind of level sets this entire conversation, because Tropicana Field was a factor. Benefited the pitchers, hurt the hitters. And we don't know what it's going to be at Steinbrenner Field. We know what the dimensions are, and we know how Yankee Stadium plays out, but we don't really have a good eye on what Yankee Stadium looks like in the summertime, because that's what Tampa Bay, we probably call them Tampa now, but what the Rays are going to be playing in that situation. So I just thought it was something when you said, hey, let's talk about this, I'm like, let's start here, because it honestly impacts the rest of this conversation
100%.
Because it's an unknown what we're going to deal with. But Tropicana Field was absolutely a benefit. And there's been a lot of work done, even like 10 plus years ago at Beyond the Box Score. They were talking about induced vertical break on fastballs. In 2000, I found an article from 2013. And then recently Baseball Prospectus had one as well, and showed just how above the norm Tropicana Field was for the fastballs. And Willie Adames famously hated hitting in Tropicana Field. He wasn't the only one. And as Rays fans, we've often talked about the road Rays and the home Rays. And 4 runs in a home game, like, woo, it happened. On the road, all of a sudden they're scoring 5, 6, 7 runs. You're like, hey, this seems fun on the road. Why don't they hit at home? More and more we see why.
No, and it makes a ton of sense, like you said, based on the climate, I'll call it, down there in Tampa, being outdoors. Because heck, I've gone to like football games in December, and you get like passing showers. That's just Florida. That's how things work down there. Doesn't matter what time of year you are. It's just called the weather when you're down there doing that. You get used to it. The humidity is a big factor. So the questions I have that none of us will probably know just yet, but I had to pull it up, sidetrack real quick. 19 of your first 22 games are at home. That says a lot. 12 of 16 games are at home in May. That changes things, which is more humid, and the list goes on and on if people want to dig in deeper. What I'm wondering is, because baseball's, MLB, I should say, has, smacked us in the face for this before, is there a humidor there? What's the humidor set at? Like, how are they going to factor all that stuff out? There's a million factors there. Like you mentioned, we got a ballpark, we know dimensions, short porch and right, so on and so forth. If it is humid, the ball travels a little better. That's kind of how things work. We can play the game, but you're still trying to predict the future in that one. I think the biggest thing, Jason, I'll ask you this before we get into more player discussion, is since it is such a front loaded schedule, then they hit the road where just the grind of the road, let alone the ballparks they're playing in, can be a lot on a player. Like, how does that just generally affect you on maybe some Rays players in fantasy? Because like offensively it could be a nice bump at the beginning, who knows in the back end. Pitching can get a bump in the back end, but can they handle the stretch on the road? It's a lot of things we don't know the answer to, but I just want to get your thoughts on that.
And that's really, we look at it and we have like 2 instances in baseball, in recent baseball history, where this has been a thing. If you'll recall when it was actually 3. I'm thinking when the Kingdome had an issue with their roof, and Seattle had to spend a lot of time playing on the road in September. Now they ended up winning that division. They came back and overtook the Angels. Sorry, Angels fans. But that was 1995. We then had, was it 98 to 2000 when the Astros got displaced for the Republican National Convention, and they were on the road a lot. And then when Montreal, when they had part of their ceiling fall down, and the Expos had to play a bunch of games on the road.
Let's think about a fourth one. We just had Toronto due to COVID not get to go to Toronto a few years ago.
Oh yeah, but that was good for them. I mean,
yeah,
they got
that's true.
That
helps
great ballparks. I mean, that was awesome for them. Go look at Vlad, 48 homers, 121 RBIs. Playing in Buffalo and Dunedin. So that's where I'm concerned. I kind of want to get the offense. Like, I want the hitters early and the pitchers late type of situation with that, because living on the road out of a suitcase is going to wear on these guys. There's just no way around it. And they're going to have these 3-4 series road trips, and they're going to come home for a little bit, then they're going to go away again. It's going to wear on them. And plus they have to play outdoors. 106 minus the dome games that they're going to get potential in Houston and Miami and Toronto and Seattle. They're playing outdoors more than they ever have. And so that may wear on them. But on the plus side, they're not playing on that fake turf as much. That was part of the reasons why the team platooned so often. It was because they wanted to keep guys fresh, keep the legs, as much as the turf isn't as bad as it used to be. It used to be terrible. And then it's gotten better over the years, but still, it's turf. It's not natural grass. So I wish we had all the answers for this, but it's going to be It will be interesting, but I really am more interested in the hitters on the front end as we see how the pitchers adjust to not having that home field advantage of pitching with Tropicana and the neutral conditions that 72 degrees in a controlled environment presented to them for home games.
Nope, and that's my biggest thing. Is mine is just the human element, like you said, traveling, living out of a suitcase. It's not as relevant anymore. But basketball fans, the Spurs every year were on the they called it the circus or the rodeo road trip or whatever. Something that came into San Antonio, overtook the Alamo Dome, and they were on the road for like 3 weeks. Like that's the longest road trip every year by any NBA team, and you could see it wear on them as the weeks went on. And baseball's even crazier because you're stuck in the same city for multiple
Well, you
days.
see it. I mean, you see it with Seattle having to do all the travel they do in season.
Yeah.
You know, as a hockey fan, the Hurricanes, because of the North Carolina State Fair, they open the season at home usually for 1 or 2 games, and then they're gone for 2 weeks. And typically by the end of that trip, they're a little dogged. They're playing well this year, but that's been one of the things that the factors into their schedule every year with that. So I remains to be seen how all this is going to be, but I just thought it was very important for us to level set. Definitely, to say, 100%. Take whatever preconceived knowledge and thoughts you had about the Rays pitchers and hitters and throw it out the window, because we're starting from square one with some of this, and we will be learning together on how this is going to impact the players, the hitters and the pitchers throughout the season.
I guess the bright side is it's a lot of young players, so they might find fun in this, like the movie Bull Durham all over again. Maybe they have a rain out that they go at Crash Davis.
You want a rain out? I'll give you a rain out.
Maybe Danny Jansen's the Crash Davis of the team. This could work out, but we'll get to him in a minute. But let's start at the top with one of your young studs that took way too long to get there last year, but we know how games can be played in this world of manipulation. That is one Junior Caminero. He had nothing to prove at AAA anymore. Cup of coffee was pretty good. There were some highs and some lows, growing pains. I have no problems with what he did. Right now, you're looking at his December ADPs, a little less than 100. How are we feeling on Caminero? Because if you like him at third base, he's like the 5th-ish, 6th third baseman off the board.
Yeah, that's the other thing. We're looking at ADP for draft champions, since December 1st, right? And you just mentioned he's just inside the top 100, like 99.8. So let's just round up to 100. Mm-hmm. He's the highest ranked hitter on this entire thing, and there's only one other guy inside the top 200 for this. That's what and so again, I believe there's value here because somebody here is being undervalued. Somebody, we don't know who. It could be more than that, but somebody's undervalued here when you have a lineup that's going to have at least 5-6 regulars, and only 2 of them are going inside the top 200. So with that said, Caminero, to me, he's like one of the 2 guys you just throw out there every day and let him do his thing. With the ballpark, I want to see, because he was pulling and hitting a lot of stuff to center field and left. He really wasn't using all fields last year, and that's one of the things. If they're going to take advantage of the dimensions of Steinbrenner Field, use all fields. He does have the talent to obviously do that, but I am. At this price, fine. I'm honestly surprised it's not a little higher given the pedigree and all the hype that came up around him last year. I forgot where he was going last year, but I know he was going a lot. I didn't end up with him on any team because he was going before even excited me wanted to take him.
Yeah, I wanted nothing to do with his ADP last year. I'm very intrigued with those. I'm usually bad at evaluating younger players that I usually have to see it first to believe it, but there's something about his skill set that looks very, very appealing. Like you mentioned, that ADP. It's interesting with him. Now, a guy that I've really never had many shares of, just because I'm not a believer in the power. We got a glimpse of it, and then it came back to reality eventually, is Yandy Diaz, who great OBP skills, really good glove, does his thing, maybe a good team leader for all we know. But when you're talking about Diaz, ADPs about 210-ish, give or take. How are we looking at him this year? Because he's a guy that's just, you mentioned 5 to 6 regulars. There's not a whole lot of movement of him as long as he's healthy.
This would be one of those things if he stays with the club. That he is a guy that would be perfect for this situation because again, he loves going the other way. And he's got enough power to hit over the short fence. So this would be an ideal park for him because his best power swing is going the opposite way. If think about the dimensions of Steinbrenner Field, 399 to left center field, and nothing to the right of center field is that far. And so this would be ideal if he stays. But that's like the other unknown in this situation is does Yandy Diaz, does Brandon Lau, does Pete Fairbanks, do these guys all make the opening day roster? Or are they traded before that happens? Because Diaz is going into the final year of his deal. And you have teams that just lost out on the Christian Walker, Paul Goldschmidt, if you consider losing out type of situation. And we don't know where Pete Alonso is going to land yet. So if somebody is like, okay, we're banking on Pete, we don't get Pete, maybe we'll make a trade for Diaz in his final year. But so those are some other things. But if Diaz stays here in the stadium, he could be a bargain at this price because of his approach in the field. And he's going to hit high in that lineup, if not lead off, because he gets on base. So that's where I'm intrigued. But my guess is that his value, he's down where he is right now because of if he gets traded, it changes the conditions of his circumstance.
Yeah, his playing time probably changes quite a bit. So that'll be quite interesting there. Brandon Lau is a guy I've always been out on because of his back injuries, but I've never denied his power. The power is ridiculous. Another 21 homers last year for the second straight year, 107 games, 109 games. It's like, if you can trust him the way you could trust Giancarlo Stanton, you'll be very happy with Brandon Lau. That feels like a lot of similarities in that, more power Stanton, of course, but you know what I'm trying to say there. Lau, though, has an ADP of around 240, 245 right now, which is kind of appealing for a middle infield option if you're feeling it. And again, ballpark could be great. How are you looking at Brandon Lau? Because you did mention him as a trade candidate as well.
Yeah, at this price, I'd love it. He is in his club option was picked up this year, and his club option is $10.5 million. He's got another club option next year for $11.5 million. If you're going to trade him, now's the time, because if you want your return on investment, you're not going to get as much in the winter for a 1-year rental, but you'll get more if you make the trade now for him. So that's where of all these players, he's probably most at risk to be traded because of the upside of his power swing. And the fact, and they could probably see him playing a little more first base as well. I mean, he was playing first base last year because of the toe injury that he played through. But like I said, when he's healthy, there's still a lot of power in that bat. And this is a really good price because last year, I want to say he was going 100 spots higher in ADP. He was around 150. So if he's going 244, why not take that chance? And if he stays, the park's built for him. And if he goes somewhere else, maybe it would only be an overall upgrade of surrounding talent.
Yeah, I'm with you. His ADP is finally intriguing to me when it comes to Brandon Lau. Now, a player I've always been a fan of. Recent years, it's been an up and down situation. 2 years ago, really good. Last year, injuries curtailed some success. And that's Josh Lowe, 10 homers, 25 steals last year. Never really got clicking, it felt like, last season. But if you want him, you still kind of have to pay for him with an ADP of around 165 right now. How are we feeling about Josh Lowe? Because I think we know the talent's there. Consistency has not been there yet.
Well, you don't have to pay what you have to pay last year for him. That's the good news. I mean,
for a trend here with the Rays.
Yeah, I mean, the best thing about him is the stolen bases you can bank on. He is the most efficient base stealer in baseball. I'm looking at the numbers. He was 32 of 35 2 years ago. He was 25 of 26 last year. And if memory serves me correct, he got screwed on the one he got thrown out on. Replay, it said call stands. But he is very efficient at stealing bases. So that's in the bank. So it's really what can he do against lefties, and can the power come back? You know, he's had some issues with oblique. He has his mother has some health issues. He's really close to his mother, and so he's had some ups and downs. How she's doing and that impacts his play as well. With that, but we've seen what he's capable of when everything's going right. And you look at the first half of that 2023 season, it was awesome. And so that happened, and that could happen again. And the ballpark configuration should play to his strengths with that, and the stolen bases will still be there for him. So I think we can confidently say 25 plus steals is easy. It's what else is going to be there. How the luck dragons are going to help him out with BABIP and everything else.
All right, that kind of gets me a little more excited to get back on that train. A player that you guys traded for last year, and Christopher Morel, was we know the power's legit. A lot of struggles once he came to Tampa. Well, he kind of struggled beforehand, don't get me wrong, but really struggled in Tampa Bay. I mean, you've mentioned it before. The batter's eye can be an issue for some guys and all these things. Again, new ballpark. This could be a blessing for Christopher Morel. How are we feeling on him? Because you can get him at a heck of a price tag these days. I'm in a DC right now around 21, and he's still on the board. His ADP is almost 300. It's 292 right now. Like, that is a gift for a potential 30 home run guy if you think he can hit for somewhat of an average.
Yeah, he was, and he may be one of the guys that benefits most from leaving Tropicana. I saw somebody shared something with me the other day, and they were like, "Hey, here are all the guys that were struggling with fastballs at a certain velocity, and Morel was the highest, like by a whole tercile. Nobody else was striking up more on fastballs than he was, and so perhaps that." Coming out of Tropicana and getting back to a more neutral environment, we know Morel's going to swing and miss a lot. He did in Chicago, so it's not all ballpark related. And his first week when he came over, he hit a couple of bombs. You're like, okay, maybe this will work out. It just didn't, and they're trying to find the defensive spot for him, and we know that's been the story forever. So again, as you said, 21st round, you're looking for upside, and 21st round, this is upside. This is a guy that is quite capable of hitting 30 home runs. Quite capable, especially now that he's outside of Tropicana Field. What risk do you take with that?
Yeah, and second base, third base eligibility. Like, he gives you so much that if he still sits there on I'm like 6 picks out. I've been staring at him for a couple of rounds playing chicken. So we'll see if I win here in a minute.
Take another guy with one of your early reserve picks. Take another second guy with your with your first reserve pick and insulate yourself.
There you go. All right. There's so many players as we play this game, Jason. We're like, if they could just stay healthy, this would be great. Danny Jansen is almost the epitome of that at catcher. We know like the offensive skill sets are pretty darn solid for Jansen. It just matters staying on the field. Now he leaves Toronto and heads to Tampa Bay. And I really like this deal because when I was looking at the Rays when the season ended, I did not like your catching situation. I'm pretty sure you didn't either. But you get Jansen now, at least offensively, maybe you didn't like it. ADP's around 312. Again, if healthy, I think this is awesome. If not, it's 312. So what's your thoughts on Danny Jansen?
So I'm a little torn because I've been a fan of the power, legit power. And you look at, like I said, the catching situation was wretched last year. It was Ben Rortvedt and Alex Jackson, who's now with the Yankees, and I would say arguably the worst hitter this side of Austin Hedges type of situation. Oof. But Rortvedt and Jansen, neither of them are good at controlling the running game. So, going into the offseason, I was really hopeful the Rays would get Carson Kelly. Carson Kelly can throw, and that's one of the things he does well. And so I thought that would help the pitchers. But now you got Rortvedt and Jansen. Rortvedt, not like he's got a weak arm. It's funny. You go into Baseball Savant and look at the data. It's the exchange. For whatever reason, Rortvedt is one of the slower catchers in the league, getting the ball from his glove into his hand into throwing. But arm strength wise, he's fine. And Jansen is not good either. So I would expect the team to be exposed to stolen bases as teams want to take advantage of this situation. But it could be a platoon. I mean, this is normally the land of platoon misfits, and this could be one of those situations where Jansen gets into a platoon situation with Rortvedt because Rortvedt is their kind of guy, gets on, can control the strike zone. He does have a rather giant hole in his swing on sliders low and in. It's like all day long, just feed him there. So Jansen may get majority of these, even though it may not be a strict platoon, it may be a pitching matchup type of platoon. But Rortvedt did have a rather exposed hole in his swing that, as the season went on, they were just taking advantage of that. It's like fastball up, breaking stuff down, and he could not lay off it.
Yeah, that is a problem. That is a big problem. So we'll see. I like the idea of Jansen being like maybe a 65-35, 60-40 type guy, get those at bats deep, like catcher 3 or late catcher 2 in a DC. I can find the appeal there. I can't wait to hear your discussion here because for those that mentioned Collette calls, Jason has bold predictions in there. I'm not going to give it away. It's behind a paywall, but there were some players that came to my attention. And another player, I've talked with Ryan about this player on Bubba and the Bloom, and we were confused on what to do with him. And that's Jonathan Aranda, who every time he gets called up, people get kind of like, okay, here he is. And then he doesn't really pan out and he goes back to AAA. Or there's like all these little moving parts there. Should pan out this year, at least playing time wise. We'll see. And his ADP is 317 in the month of December. So what are your thoughts on Mr. Jonathan Aranda?
See, and that's where I'm excited about him because he's free. He's now free. And so last year he looked fantastic in camp last year. And then he got an oblique injury right at the end, or got hit. No, he got hit in the arm. And then he had an oblique. I forget but he had a got hit in the arm and had an oblique injury, and I forget the order of which, but it really set him back. But he looked fantastic. He looked all but assured to have a roster spot coming out of camp. Then he struggled, and then he was, like you said, came up and down once or twice, did not look great. But then September, it's like, again, I didn't have much to watch. I knew this team was out of the postseason by early August. But in September, I was very in tune to what they were doing, and Aranda's at-bats really stood out. Like, he looked like he was finally getting that confidence that we had seen from him in Durham, in Montgomery, throughout the minor. Like, he was hitting the ball with authority. And that's what got me excited, because, again, going to the ballpark, it's a part. He's going to have as many at-bats as he wants against right-handed pitching, as much as he wants. And so at this price, I'm excited. I don't know where he's going to play. That's the issue right now. He's first base, and that's why his ADP is so low. And he may get more time at first base, but it's not going to take him too much longer to get some other position with that. But let's be real. He's in the organization for his bat. He's never had a good defensive home. They've tried to find places for him, but he's there for his bat. There were times where people were like, oh, maybe Luis Arraez is light, and like super light, like maybe the Timu version of Luis Arraez, but he can hit. And I was really excited about what I saw from him in September. And that's why at this price, if I can find, I'm at the end, okay, I need a CI. I've taken my second catcher. I've done some other things. I need a CI in the 22nd, 23rd round. I'll take the chance.
Yeah, that's where I'm kind of interested there. The CI option, roster resource, it's early, so it's never the end all be all here. Would they have him at DH potentially? You mentioned if Diaz gets traded, well, there's first base opens up.
Yeah.
There's windows there for him that make it quite enticing, to say the least. Another player I've been very excited about when he was with the Dodgers, and then that didn't pan out. He goes to Tampa Bay in a trade, and then gets a little bit of playing time last year. Looked good at moments, not so great in others. But then it's like the platoon situations. But now Jose Siri's gone. Now Dylan Carlson's gone. Like, some of the depth is missing now. Johnny DeLuca is a guy that I believe the speed in the minors was pretty good. The power is pretty good as well. So that's where my optimism lies. And when you're talking Johnny DeLuca, you have an ADP of 340 basically. So how are we feeling on him?
This is one I'm not excited about compared to everybody else. It's when I look at DeLuca, I can't help but get Sam Fuld in my head. And
Oof.
Sam Fuld looked great at moments, but then when Sam Fuld got overexposed, he didn't look like super Sam Fuld anymore. And that's where I have, like, DeLuca last year, a lot of his numbers, you look at his numbers, they were front loaded. Go back and look at his first 10 games with Tampa Bay. He's like driving all these runs. You're like, oh my God, they did it again. And then he went, boom, gone. I feel he is the perfect fourth outfielder. He can play all three spots in a pinch. This is not an everyday player. That said, as you said, look at the depth chart. He is currently an everyday player because there are no other options. And so I'm very curious as we mentioned, there are some guys that are nailed down, like trying to nail Jello on this roster. If they make a deal, do they try to find a replacement outfielder? Because honestly, I can't look at the org chart and see anything else right now. So it's DeLuca's job to lose, but that doesn't mean much. He could be out there every day, but I don't know if I want him overexposed.
Yeah, because like in my brain, they put Siri out there every day. And yes, Siri had his moments. The average is garbage, but he had a little power. He had some speed.
He's an elite defender.
That was the kicker. Yeah. And so what do you believe in with DeLuca in that regard?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I would feel a lot better about DeLuca in an AL only league as a fourth outfielder than I would in a mixed league as a fifth.
That's very telling. Very telling. The Rays always have fun with like you already mentioned, there's like 5 or 6 spots nailed down, which is usually 3 or 4 more than usual in Tampa. So we have some moving and shaking. What do you see playing out here? Because I see you have Richie Palacios. Then you can mention the other guys too. Palacios is always interesting because he has multi-position eligibility and stuff. But what do you like in this grouping here for fantasy relevance?
I mean, I like Palacios because the team likes him. He makes the type of contact they're looking for, and he can play multiple positions. He can play second base. He can play the outfield. They had him even. I think he played a game at first. So he has what they like. Injuries got in the way of him last year as well. But he can also steal the bases, and so that talent's going to find its way into the lineup a a lot, especially against right-hand hitters. Somebody who's, we look way down, and like Curtis Mead has got an ADP of 665, and he's not even going in all the DCs. And we talked about earlier about the stadium and swing and approaches made for Yankee Stadium. That's Curtis Mead. Curtis Mead loves going the other way. He's kind of like Yandy Diaz in that regard. And Curtis Mead, we laughed a couple of years ago when the Rays traded Christopher Sanchez for Curtis Mead. You're like, the Rays did it again. And then Christopher Sanchez flipped that script rather quickly. And they were like, oh, man, what are the Rays doing? Well, this is like make or break time for Curtis Mead. This is his chance. He like Aranda, he doesn't have a great defensive home, and most of that is because he doesn't throw very well. And so maybe he ends up being the platoon first baseman. They're trying to find a spot for him, but I'm very intrigued with how his swing plays at Yankee Stadium this year. Steinbrenner, Yankee, whatever. But I'm very intrigued because that approach, he's an all fields types approach guy, and this could help. You're looking for late round value. Like we say, his ADP is 665 right now. That's late. That's mid 40s. That's late.
I want to ask you about Jose Caballero just real quick. I didn't put him on the outline, so we don't have to go deep into this at all. But he has all the positions, basically. I just sarcastically say that. He has, I think it's second, short, third for sure. He runs forever. Batting average is not great. Like if you look at player raters, he's still one of the top shortstops in baseball last year because of the steals. I pass on him pretty much every draft, but like Ryan loves him. Other people are big fans of him. How do you see him playing out there? He feels like a platoon guy, but like, Willie Castro still plays 140 games. What's Caballero going to do?
Yeah, that's the weird, because he led the AL in stolen bases at 44. And then he also got caught 16 times. Honestly, it felt like more than that. I swear it felt like he got caught 20 plus times last year. But he doesn't get on base a lot either. He doesn't walk a lot, but when he's on base, he is running. And so he was a nice, last year, he was one of those guys I was picking up for $1 in drafts, and that worked out great. Just on the steals alone. Everything else was like a wash, but the steals alone were great. But the success rate, I don't know how that holds with that opportunity. So I can see passing on him, but the flexibility certainly is tough to ignore with the three positions that he has at his disposal. But I'm more expecting a step back than a step forward. I don't think there's much more there, and we may have seen the best fantasy season out of Caballero.
Yep, I totally understand. That's why I've said I was kind of avoid. It looks appealing, but I avoid. Let's head to the bump here. Let's talk about the ace of the Rays. The ace that didn't even pitch in 2024, as he was recovering from his second Tommy John surgery. That is Shane McClanahan, coming in with an ADP of around a little over 100, 103, going as high as 80 in the month of December. So some people like him. I know at FPAS, I was giving Nick Pollock a lot of flack because he had him as a top 5 starting pitcher. And I'm like, okay, he's good. But like to me, rein it back a little. That's just me. What are your thoughts? Because my biggest concern is with any pitcher coming off of this, especially a second Tommy John, is just innings in general. So that is my concern. How do you approach Shane McClanahan drafts besides passing on him?
Yeah, you and me, like he said he wants to throw. I was looking at the quote. He wants to throw 150-ish innings.
I saw that and I laughed. I'm like, I want to win $1 million tomorrow too. Like
I laughed too. So if anybody has listened to me forever, my stance is always I want to wait 2 years on these guys to see when, because with Tommy John surgery, it's not the velocity, it's always the command, and that's the last thing that comes back. And because McClanahan needs that changeup there, because his surgery date was mid-August of 2013, so we will be 18 months. So it would not surprise me to see him come in March and spring training and just throwing lasers. But I want to know, like, are those lasers where they need to be, or are they like stormtrooper lasers that are all over the place? So that's honestly what I'm most concerned about. But I am not all back in on these guys until they're 2 full years from their surgery date. So I would expect some struggles. I would disagree with Nick that McClanahan has top 5 stuff.
Yes, agreed with that.
When he's 100%, but yes. I don't know if he's 100%. And again, getting back to all the other factors of now he's got to pitch outdoors. Now he's got to pitch in a different stadium situation, how all of that weighs in. At least the ADP right now is 109. I've seen he's gone as high as 70 since December 1st. No, I cannot get on board with taking him inside the top 100. I just can't. And I would want to see who's going around him for things. That's usually one of the things I like to do is like, okay, let's see who's going around. And if I get back down to McClanahan, I got Sonny Gray, I got Zach Gallen, I got Ryan Walker Flaherty, Rodon. Like there's a lot of guys I like below that I can pass on McClanahan and say, you know what, somebody else take that chance with that. But I'm with you. It's the innings, and he wants to pitch 150-ish. Yeah. By the end of the day, he's probably going to be like 135, 140.
Yeah, I
did coming out.
Like I did the lazy research. I called Google a few months ago. I just Googled pitchers off of 2 Tommy John surgeries. They list off, like someone wrote an article, I think for The Athletic or ESPN or something. The only pitcher that rings a bell of any success since having 2 Tommy John surgeries was Nathan Eovaldi, and that was 2 to 3 years after the fact, like you said.
Right.
It was never right. Most of them don't even like make it much past the usual. So it's just rooting for the kid. I'm just gonna watch for now.
Yeah, he pitched 115 in 2023 before he went down. Yep. I would venture he's going to be closer to that number than he is 150-ish by the end of this season.
Completely agree.
I'd love to be wrong. I love watching the guy pitch, even though he went to USF. So we'll see. We'll see where it happens. What happens with it.
Yeah. All righty. Let's talk Ryan Pepio here. One of the other players you got from the Los Angeles Dodgers a couple years ago. I've been a Pepio fan. I think most of us have been. Strikeouts have been pretty good. Ratios have been strong, and an ADP around 160-ish, give or take. Pretty solid as well. What are your thoughts on Pepio?
Really enjoyed watching him pitch for the most part. Last year, there were times where home run was a bit of an issue, but he came in, accepted the Kyle Snyder blueprint, and really embraced it. And so I'm excited to see him take that step forward. If we look back, just rewind last year, look at the growth that Taj Bradley showed in season last year. And that's what I would love to see from Ryan Pepio this year. What I don't want to see is I don't want to see Ryan Pepio do what Taj Bradley did last year. And we'll get into that in a little bit. But that's where we see go back and look at what Kyle Snyder's been able to do with these guys after that first season and the growth that Blake Snell took and the growth that Tyler Glasnow took. It's like he's got a tremendous track record of getting the most out of these guys. And I'm really excited to see where Pepio is. I would have no problem if somebody was like, you know, I'm going to take Pepio over Shea McClanahan this year. I could get behind that.
Yep. I'm with you too. A healthy arm and a recovering arm, 2 different things to me. So very, very optimistic in that as well. You mentioned Taj Bradley. It's a guy we've talked about on the show the last 2 years. And I feel like I may be misremembering. We were both excited about him. We like the skill set of Taj Bradley. There's a lot we like about him. It's just the consistency, the control. You'll be sitting there watching him dominate. Like he had that run this last year of it was like 5-6 starts. It felt like just pure domination. And then it just disappeared. And so where are we at on Taj this year?
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, his growth, I was very excited about him last year, targeted him in multiple leagues, and early on that was paying off extremely well. And then, like you said, I'm trying to remember exactly when he hit that wall, but when he hit it hard. Like he had that one start in ball. I'm looking at it now. He had that start in Baltimore, June 1st, where he allowed 4 home runs, 9 earned runs, but then he went on that run. And that run was amazing until it wasn't again. But he went on that run from the second start in June all the way until June 25th, where he just wasn't allowing anything.
July 25th.
And so he was hit a low, then he was super high. And it's almost like he got full of himself and was like, hey, this is easy. And then baseball is a humbling game. And it came back and it humbled him hard until the end. Towards the end of the season, he finally looked like himself his last couple of starts. But he got a giant serving of humble pie in August. Giant. Like one of the reasons why James Anderson won AL Labor and I didn't repeat was because Taj Bradley absolutely nuked my ratios. Because remember, in Labor, you can't bench a guy. You got to cut him. And I was too stubborn to cut Taj Bradley, but I should have.
Yeah, cutting him would have been tricky, especially in that format. I see your pain. Let's put it that way, of having to make that decision because I loved Bradley. It was hard for me I benched him, but it was hard for me to cut him. I eventually did, but like an NFBC format. So I get it. It's tricky. I'm buying back in though. I like the talent level. That's for sure.
I mean, at this price, 177. You know, he's going almost 2 rounds after a round or 2 behind Shane Baz. It's like at this price, I think there's a lot of like, oh yeah, he was terrible in August. My hope is that what happened to him in August and that humble pie has digested itself. And he's like, okay, this is what I have to do better because he can't do. I mean, he was pitching at like Bob Gibson levels before that came.
Crazy.
He can't do that but he's not as bad as he was in August. There's a happy medium somewhere there in between, and that happy medium, honestly, is more valuable than a 177th overall pick. So again, I think there's a little bit of value here because that August pain is still very fresh in a lot of people's minds.
I'm with you. Let's talk Zach Lytle. This is a pitcher that he has some moments. Like you wonder if he can go deep enough into a game, and then he will, like 5 or 6 innings, usually 5. Strikeouts usually been pretty good. It's just, can he give me enough chances for wins to have the rest of the profile match up? No, you only have to pay an ADP, heck, 375-ish, 400 right now. So you're not paying like a massive price tag. But how are we feeling on Lytle? Because it never felt like he really got that full go in the starting rotation.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. He is a perfect back end type of guy, both for real and fantasy. He's not somebody that I could put in a set it and forget it lineup. Like going back to the labor situation, I'd have a little less value of him in labor where I couldn't bench him because he doesn't have great stuff. What he's got is the things you don't measure, like the pitchability, the guile, how he can locate really well and is a quick worker type of situation. But he doesn't have great stuff. And when he's off, he can get hit hard and he can allow the home runs, but thankfully he doesn't walk too many guys. So he doesn't get hurt as much as other pitchers do in those circumstances. But this would be somebody I would look at more as a streamer than somebody like, I mean, this is an appropriate price based off his stuff. This is where he should be drafted.
Yep, totally fair. And you mentioned this man's name earlier, Shane Baz. The hype train is real. Finally got a 14 starts last year, 79 innings, looked better and better as the season went on, which, shocker, young player needs reps. That was good to see. But, you do have to pay the piper. Like you said, his ADP is around 170, so he's going ahead of Taj by a round and a half, 2 rounds. Do you want to buy, what's the innings jump? There's so many questions I have with him that kind of keeps me off of him. Let's put it that way.
I mean, you'll remember back when he was traded from Pittsburgh, there was discussion about like, hey, is this a starter or is this a reliever? I mean, and it feels like Baz has been in the fantasy scene for a number of years now, but he has less than or fewer than 120 career innings. He's at 119.2, which is kind of mind blowing to me. It feels like he's been around like 5 years, but that's all we're dealing with. And so, like you said, last year he pitched 79. The year before that, he pitched 0. So how's the body going to respond from him going from 0 to 79 to whatever? The Rays typically like to keep their year-over-year increase on these guys around 25%. And Baz is still only 25 years old. He turns 26 in the middle of the summer. So this is still a young arm. I don't see him pitching. Yeah, I would say 128. Maybe he doubles his career workload this year, but I don't see him going much more than that. And if that's the case, this ADP is too high.
Yep, and that's why I just kind of walk past him every time. He has those starts where he looked really great last year, but then he goes 2 innings the next time or something. Like, you're just like the control you talked about. All right, any other starters worth discussing? Because the first one you did write down, I have had shares of for a couple years in DCs. If he could ever just like lower the rock rate to like 6%, I'm a fan. Like, he's so dynamic. But what are some starters to potentially look at in Tampa Bay?
So, I mean, three guys come to mind. One was in the Jeffrey Springs deal with Joe Boyle. Again, this may be the test of how great Kyle Schneider is. If they can take Joe Boyle and be like, hey, you kind of look like Tyler Glass now. You want to try a couple of things. If they can make this work, man, Kyle Schneider needs to go to the Hall of Fame.
Yes.
Because you've seen Boyle pitch, you've had him, you can see what he's capable of when he can find the plate with any kind of consistency. I'm excited to see what can happen there. But there's no way you have to have a bench. DC is perfect. But like if other things, like watch from afar. And I only mentioned 2 other names because they may not need to make the rotation to make the club to get in the club. Ian Seymour and Joe Rock, both lefties. And if you look at the current depth chart, Garrett Clevenger's out of options. And Mike Montgomery, who looked really good, by the way, last year out of the bullpen. That's it for lefties. They don't have anybody else. And so Seymour and Rock could make the team as multi-inning relievers. And Seymour in particular has looked really good last year. He was coming back from Tommy John surgery and honestly looked a lot better than a lot of people expected. So that's where I'm bringing those names up for deeper leagues. I'm not talking mixed leagues. Don't worry about it. I'm talking about your 50 rounds, your AL only folks. These are names to reckon because the team is going to use these types of guys, and I expect to see them pitch at some point this year. And every year they find somebody. It's like, oh wow, where did this guy come from? And look there.
They're very good at that wow factor you just mentioned. Every year, by September, you might be looking at dollar bids on some guys like this. That never fails with the Rays. Let's go to the bullpen, though. Pete Fairbanks, we talk about him every year. You mentioned, he's the guy when healthy because everyone talks committees, but maybe things have changed. Who knows? You could fill me in there. We did see strikeouts decrease quite a bit for Fairbanks last year. Ratios changed a bit. How are we approaching the bullpen in Tampa Bay?
Yeah, to me, it's Fairbanks feels like he's gone sooner rather than later, and not because of a degradation of skills or anything. It's just, the contract situation, and they have other options with that. So, if when you look at where Fairbanks is being taken right now, he's the second pitcher off the board in the organization at 158, which I think that's reflecting the uncertainty of the market, where they're like, hey, is this guy? I mean, we know 50 innings is probably his max because he never really gets any higher than that because something creeps up on him. But if he gets traded, does he get traded into a closer role or how he gets used with that? So again, those are the risks you take, and that's why Fairbanks is going at the price. I mean, to me, the other way I want to go, and he's the next reliever, is Drew Rasmussen. I think Rasmussen, I believe he's being drafted more as a starter, but Rasmussen is another one of those guys who's had multiple surgeries on his elbow. To me, it's just like, do what you can. I think, I believe he said he wants to be a starter again. And before his last surgery, he did look really good. I mean, he looked like Zach Littell with better stuff. He was quick working and just pounded the zone, got a lot of pump ups. I mean, he was working really well before he got hurt again. But he's had multiple surgeries because he got used. There was some questionable usage of him in college back to Oregon State, from what I recall. So if Fairbanks gets traded, to me, Rasmussen's a perfect guy to put in that situation. Like, go do what you did. He only pitched 35 innings last year, but go look at what he did. He looked
good in those 35.
Looked
really
nasty.
good.
And I would love to see him and say, here's the ball, go.
That's why when you made the claim you made, that's why I said I could see it based on what he did last year. It fits the mold.
But yeah, that's to me, he could be, if Fairbanks were traded right now and Rasmussen were to be like in the shape, he's got the ability to be a top 10 closer this year because Tampa Bay is going to play a lot of close games. You don't have to be a 95 to 100 win team to get a lot of saves. That 85 to 95 or even that 80 to 90 is a really nice sweet spot. And Rasmussen could be out there getting that action like that. And I would be really excited at this current ADP. Especially if you've already taken, this is the ideal guy to take as your third reliever. If you're a guy that goes 6 starters and 3 relievers, this is an ideal guy to go ahead and reach up a little bit to take as your third reliever.
I like that. I'm going to ask you about him real quick because you did write him down. And when Ryan and I did our late round, like post 500 ADP targets, Hunter Biggie was my reliever. That was one of the guys I liked a lot. I loved what we saw briefly in Chicago. The skill set is electric for a closer. Again, command can be an issue, but he's a closer. We've seen that before. Do you think he has some sort of impact this year? Obviously, Rasmussen, you have ahead of him, but do you think Biggie could have something as well?
I do. So when I saw Biggie pitch last year, when Tampa Bay got him, my first impression was Pete Fairbanks. It reminded me what Fairbanks looked like when Fairbanks came over from Texas for Nick Solak. That was my impression. And Biggie was upper 90s with his stuff, and he had very, very similar attitude, makeup, just everything reminded me of a young Pete Fairbanks, which is why I wanted to make mention of him here because, like you said, in a deeper league and in DCs and whatnot, the stuff is there. And now is the opportunity going to happen for him? That's the unknown, but he's got a very live arm, and there's a reason why the Rays wanted him in that deal.
Yeah, ADP, it's 675 at 700. So yeah, you can do some damage in that for sure. All right, let's head to the prospect world where the Rays are always moving and shaking, and people wonder when they make trades why they get a bunch of single errors because, well, you can only have so many guys on the roster, guys. So they let them build up and do the thing. It's working. That's why we started the show saying when 80 losses is your worst year in a while, that says a lot for a team that doesn't spend. So it starts here in the minors. What do you see as potential impact guys this season?
So on the pitching side, I made mention of Seymour and Rock because they're lefties, and that's what the team needs. From that, we mentioned Boyle. So honestly, I don't see anything else from the pitching side this year. From the hitting side, two names to watch. One is Carson Williams at shortstop, highest ranked prospect for them, and Taylor Walls does not stand in anybody's way. Other than success. Taylor Walls just drives me nuts. But Carson Williams, it feels like we need to keep this position warm until playing time is service time is manipulated. But so Carson Williams is somebody I want to watch. I don't know how quickly he gets to the roster, but he would arguably be the best shortstop situation. And the fact they haven't tried to do anything in the open market as of yet speaks to we're just going to slow play this until we believe Carson's ready. And then going back to the center field situation with DeLuca, I don't think he's a regular, but I don't know how you overlook Chandler Simpson either. I mean, Chandler Simpson, I don't know if he can hit major league pitching, but I'd like to see him try. Chandler Simpson is the fastest guy that you will see in the minor leagues. He ended up with 104 steals last year and scored 90. Yeah, 104 steals and scored 90 runs, drove in 29 with 1 home run. But he hit 355, 410, 397. Like, he accepts his walks. Just slap it and put it in play. We saw this play out with Billy Hamilton. I would like to see Chandler Simpson get the opportunity to do something, succeed, fail, whatever. But stolen base wise, stole 81, 94, and 104. And if the Rays aren't competing this year, they're not going to be a playoff contender. If they are, I will dump a jar of mayonnaise on my head because today's the Duke Mayo's Bowl, right? So if they're in the playoff contention, I'll dump mayonnaise on my head. But I would love to see Chandler Simpson run. It was fun watching him in the game in Birmingham. I mean, you just see him run, and it's just wow. And I would love to see that happen. So to me, if they don't do anything between now and camp to get another center fielder, perhaps that is okay. We're going to try to give Chandler Simpson a shot because he just turned 24. He doesn't have any time. He has 0 at bats above AA. And normally, and Justin and I were just talking about this on one of the recent Sleeper in the Bus. Normally, that's a huge red flag for me,
especially for Tampa.
But that situation also cost me not taking Jackson Churio. I was like, oh no, I'm not saying Simpson is Jackson Churio, but I'm also learning that you don't have to go to every level. It doesn't have to be A-, A+, AA, AAA, and if he skips a level, oh my God, I need to be more open-minded. And again, that speed is going to be a weapon, and it's just a matter of how it's going to be used. If it's going to be in Durham all year, and if so, I may have to get on the Amtrak and ride over from Charlotte, Durham to go see it more. But I want to see where Chandler Simpson comes into play.
Yeah, no, it's intriguing, and I like the points you also made about a lot of these kids are starting to jump now. Not all of them turn into Churio, but a lot of them are getting chances now that didn't get them before by jumping levels, and we'll see what the Rays do that. And that is intriguing with the profile. That's more of a profile we grew up watching in like the 80s and early 90s. That sounds very exciting to watch, but it'll be good to bring back. It sounds perfect for the Rays, honestly.
The only other name that could be there that could slow play that is Jake Mangum. And I laugh because he's been taken in 1 DC so far. And Jake Mangum did play AAA, did have 20 steals last year, did hit 317 with a 357 OBP, and is older. I mean, he's 28 years old, and the club did add him to he'll be 29 as the season starts. They did add him to the 40-man roster. So that could be the first option. And if that doesn't work out, then okay, maybe Simpson comes up. But Mangum is another guy in your 50s. Somebody's already drafted him. Somebody else should, because there's a good chance they added him to the 40-man roster for a reason.
Yep.
And there's a good chance that he may be the other part of the center field platoon if the club does decide to stay in-house.
And that's the last point there is they added him to the 40-man. That's always the telltale sign, especially on certain teams, the way they move.
A 28-year-old. You're like, okay, we traded for you from Miami, and oh, by the way, we're adding you to the 40-man.
Yeah, and you're old for a prospect, so let's figure this out now or never. All right, my friend, that'll wrap it up. The one last question I ask every person: what are your expectations for the 2025 Rays? I know it's early, it's January, but what are your expectations?
My son and I were having the same conversation in the car. We went hiking on Wednesday, on New Year's Day. We went hiking. We were talking like what expectations, and I was like, I would love to see them get back to 500. It's gonna be an uphill climb, though. I mean, with all the circumstances around everything. And that second half schedule where they're living out of suitcases. If they do, Kevin Cash should win another Manager of the Year, because it's on paper this is rough, and this could be a 75 win team on paper, but they've got, I mean, the pitching is the foundation, and I don't know if they normally, this used to be a team, the DNA was pitching and defense. I don't see the defense on this club as much as I see the pitching, and we'll see how all the other factors play out. But if some of the offensive upside hits with the talent mixed into the new circumstances at home, this could be a fun team to watch.
Yep, most definitely.
I'll watch it either way, but this could be a fun team to watch.
I'm always excited with the Rays. They do stuff that keep you interested. They're more just like you're rooting for the underdog, just because they're out there grinding it out and they do it. So I'm looking forward to it as well. Before we head out, though, remind everybody where they can find you. You got a lot going on these days.
Yeah, so if I'm at Blue Sky, Jason Collette, you mentioned earlier, Collette calls every week. We're 1/3 of the way through the bold prediction series. I've got the NL and the AL East done. Currently working on the AL Central with that, and so those have come out on a weekly basis this time of year. And so I'm also writing player outlooks at RotoWire. Right now, I think I've done 200 and something of them. So if you're reading some of those, you're like, man, that sounds like something Collette said. Probably was. And then Justin and I are back on this time of year every Sunday, as long as there's not some type of family emergency that pops up. But we're back to a regular recording schedule on Sundays, and we're looking for guests. So, Bubba, we'll be calling you to have you come on. And if anybody, we've had some requests for Chris Clegg. They love his dynasty work, and somebody wants the general. So we got to get Ian Kahn back on. So Justin's been fielding those requests around his new blooming TikTok channel that I see.
I saw about that. My goodness gracious, stop it. Oh man, we love that man though. But yeah, no, you guys got my number anytime. Just let me know. But as always, thanks for joining me. A pleasure talking to you, and we'll have to chat again sometime.
All right, man. Thanks for having me on.
You got it. This is Bench with Bubba, episode 712, the 2025 Tampa Bay Rays team preview with the one, the only, Jason Collette. Catch you all next time.